Welcome into Football and Other F Words. My name is Zach Lyons. You can follow me on Twitter at FWordsPod. And today, the co-host, of course, as always, for at least the season till he's like, I am out. I am sick of you. I'm sick of this team. It is Mike Herndon, who is part of the Broadway Sports Media Network, who also writes articles for paulkarski.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Mike Miracles. I refuse to say what it actually is. If you want to know what his new Twitter handle is, you got to come to the YouTube page to see it because I refuse to call you this new Twitter handle. It's a disgrace.
I had held on, like I'd created Mike Miracles way back when I was writing for Music City Miracles, and that was the reason that I had that on there. I haven't been writing for that site for several years now, and so I figured it was time to go ahead and get rid of that thing. So I finally made the switch.
So breaking news. I don't know how long this will happen. So maybe when you hear this on Wednesday, it doesn't really matter. Jared Stillman's Twitter account has been hacked. And it has been hacked through, I think, the metaverse. And some cryptocurrency people have hacked him and the founder. They've claimed him the founder of the $DAI digital currency. This is pretty hilarious because I think this happened because on Friday I caught his show and he said he's really against cryptocurrency and he thinks it's a scam. So now he's been hacked by cryptocurrency, big crypto itself.
Like it. Cryptocurrency finally doing something for us.
It is hilarious. Not to derail the show, but classic F Words fashion. We've gotten off topic. We are brought to you by Football and Other F Words is brought to you by Jaspers. And boy, do I have big news for you guys. Massive news about Jaspers. I go to their website today and I'm like, let's look at their specials. Let's see what kind of food they got going on this week and everything. No food specials, but that's okay. Mike, let me tell you what they got on Sunday. Sundays during the games, obviously, but Sunday all day long. 2-for-1 beer specials.
That's
all day
good.
long.
That's good.
So this is the perfect place to go watch the Tennessee Titans because now you can drink your sorrows away and black out or brown out if you are a liquor person. And you get 2-for-1 beer. So you're going to save a ton of money if you go here compared to other places. So go to Jaspers, watch this terrible team crap itself in the second half. Enjoy 2-for-1 beers, and they're high quality beers. This isn't like Natty Lights, which, you know, if that's your thing still in your 30s, you know, that's okay. It's all right. No Busch Light. This is craft beer, high quality beer at Jaspers, West End. 2-for-1 beers all day Sunday. Head over there. Watch the Titans game on all their TVs. You can go play Jenga. You can go play some basketball. They got all kinds of stuff, and they got fabulous food. So head to Jaspers, 2-for-1 specials. Tell them the Football and Other F Words sent you, and tell them that Mike Miracle sent you because we are not having this discussion again, but I'm not using that Twitter handle. Because look at it this way. You could have kept it as Mike Miracles because you are a miracle to the fans because you have to break down these awful games.
Well, I could have just changed it to Mike Awful.
You could.
that could have worked as well.
Oh my gosh. So apparently Jared's Twitter, I got inside sources. Apparently Jared's Twitter account got hacked because someone called his number and saying they were Twitter verification, got his info, and it's a wrap.
Wow. Wow.
And it was the cryptocurrency people.
What an amazing turn of events here for Titans media.
Oh man, what a fantastic development. I'll keep you updated throughout the podcast if any more news breaks up. So, Mike, the Titans escape with a win. I don't know if that's the right word, but they kind of got lucky. Everybody had their moral victory Monday, in my opinion, talking about the season is saved and all this stuff. Oh, this is ridiculous crap. Look, they won. They beat a poorly coached Raiders team. I don't think I've ever seen a Raiders team look this poorly coached. And we're talking about the years of ineptitude of coaches that have come through the Raiders franchise. This was a pretty terrible game plan that they came in with. They didn't really run. Devontae Adams on deep routes. They kind of weirdly, and at certain points of the game, gave up on the run game that was working. Just a
They
weird thing.
always give up on the run game. They
Yeah.
always give up on that's why, like, I know we had a little bit of a discussion before the game last week that, it's like, well, Josh Jacobs being out, does it matter or not? And it's like, yeah, it matters a little bit, but they're not going to commit to the run game either way. Like, it doesn't matter who's out there. They just bail on the run game. They always do. And it was working. And the Titans' run defense is a major problem right now. We'll save that for a little bit later, but it's I thought it's a good win though, because I mean, look, any NFL win is a good win. The Titans showed some life. They showed some things that looked like vintage, 2019, 2020 kind of Titan stuff. And they brought out some new wrinkles as well. And it's funny having rewatched the game on all 22 now. I feel a lot differently about the game than I did in the moment. In a lot of ways, like.
So in the moment, how did you feel? Because I sitting there in the moment, I'm like, first half, I'm like, oh, this is great. They're obviously going to come out and make me eat my words, if they continue this throughout the whole game. And then they reverted back to the same old Tennessee Titans in the second half. So I was just like, it's kind of a wash for me. So I still feel that way. But tell us in the moment how you felt, and now how you felt after watching all 22.
Yeah, so like in the moment, I mean, overall, I felt like they kind of escaped and certainly made that more difficult than they needed to. And I don't really feel any different about that outlook on it, but I do feel differently about some of my big takeaways from the game. Like I thought coming out of the game, I was like, wow, the tackles actually played pretty well. Tackles did not play well. The Titans,
it was funny because you said that on the day, and it kind of looked like they did, in the moment. And then I saw the stats, and I'm like, well, these guys didn't play that well.
They didn't give up a ton of sacks, and they were facing good edge rushers and everything. So it was like, oh, they must have played well. They did not play well. Like the Titans, and I know it's not okay. It's not a safe space to say anything nice about Todd Downing. The Titans did a wonderful job of protecting those tackles in this game and not completely sacrificing the passing game, because they helped. There was only probably maybe a handful of times all game where either Nicholas Petit-Frere or Dennis Daly were on an island against Max Crosby and Chandler Jones. And I mean, those were few and far between. And look, MPF was really bad, honestly, in most of this game. I came away from the game initially thinking, oh, he played pretty well, because like I didn't hear Max Crosby's name called a ton. I mean, he obviously had the one sack. He had a batted ball. He had a couple tackles for loss, that kind of thing. But, it's not like he took over the game. On second watch, he did take over the game. The Titans were just able to scheme around it, frankly. So I think they did a good job of hurting the Raiders where they could be hurt and protecting their weak spots, which is clearly the offensive tackle positions right now. And I thought Downing had a really good game plan. And honestly, the biggest thing that changed for me coming out of the game, I thought, well, God, they went super conservative, same old Titans in the second half, trying to, ride out a lead and not attack anymore. And I don't really think that's true. I think the execution just failed them in the second half. I mean, you had the first drive, they come out, they run the ball, then they have a penalty for too many men on the field, which puts them in second and long right away. They have another pass play that goes to Derrick Henry, but there's Nicholas Petit-Frere is ineligible downfield. So that backs them up to like second and 20. And then they end up throwing the interception a couple plays later on a route where clearly Robert Woods ran that route too long. Like zero doubt about it in my mind, that interception that Tannehill threw. Woods ran that route about 4 or 5 yards. It looked like he got his steps off. Like he missed his exit on that out route, and that's why that throw ended up looking like it was out of nowhere.
Well, and then the throw, I thought, I thought he didn't do well going through his reads either on that particular throw because I felt like Burks was streaking open. I mean, just kind of like what he does. So, I
Yeah.
kind of felt like that play, yeah, Tannehill threw an interception, but it feels like it was supposed to go to Robert Woods. That's where they've been going all game, right? So that was kind of like, to me, going into something that was a positive that hasn't been a positive for this team, was that they were determined to use Robert Woods and Derrick Henry, and it was working in the first half. And then in the second half, just miscues all over. Like you said, a little bit of execution, a little bit of predictable play calling. I thought play action, though, usage being as high as it was, helped with the issue of Max Crosby and the pass rush there. That was a positive. And I thought that Derrick Henry is inching closer and closer to what he was. Maybe he'll never be truly a league leading rusher, but he can at least be the guy that threatens the defense.
Yeah, and I thought he looked better. He still didn't look like he had that fifth gear that we're used to seeing him have once he gets to the second level. So I'm not totally sure he's like all the way back,
Right.
but he looked a lot more like himself in this game than he has the first two. And I thought also his contributions in the passing game obviously were significant. And I love the way the Titans used him in the passing game, because what they asked him to do was basically they would run play action. And this is taking advantage of how teams are now defending the Titans. Like the Titans, when they first got hot offensively, were just killing teams off of play action, running these, glance routes and deep overs, crosses, that kind of thing, hitting guys over the middle, letting them run after the catch. And they're still doing that. Like they still had several plays that featured that kind of action in this game. But what teams have started to do is they have got their linebackers almost overcompensating. So you'll see linebackers, when they see play action and they recognize that it is going to be a pass, they will sprint back. And I mean, like, they go super deep because they're trying to get into the crossing lanes and intercept or be able to mess with the windows for those crossers that they like to run. Well, now the Titans kind of counterpunch to that seems to be, well, if you guys do that, we're just going to have Derrick Henry sit down right where your linebackers just left, and we can just dump it off to him, and he can pick up, 5 to 10 yards easily. And they did that 3 or 4 times in this game, and it was wildly effective. So I'm excited to see that, because that is a good way to counteract teams being overly aggressive at dropping their linebackers deep over the middle of the field. And, if you start to get those linebackers start to creep back up again, you start to open up the crossers again. So it's a little bit of like that cat and mouse game. And I feel like the Titans finally are showing some ability to counter what defenses are throwing at them. And Derrick Henry catching the football and being at least, I mean, he's never going to be Christian McCaffrey or anything like that. Like, that's just not who he is. But if he can sit down in a wide open zone and catch a pass from Ryan Tannehill, throwing it at tailgate, casual toss distances, that's all they really need him to do. And that was a big part of their game. I think he had 50 something yards receiving in this game. And that was, those were some significant plays in the grand scheme of things.
If you're the fans, and if you're the Titans themselves, how do you handle Derrick Henry, in the sense that we saw today that at Titanstat on Tuesday put out this thing about first half Henry, second half Henry, and all that stuff. Good long thread of just raw data. And we know that Derrick Henry is probably never going to be a 2,000-yard rusher at this point. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to believe that, and mainly because the Titans are trying to limit his carries. But what do you think about this idea of offsetting the carries with some receiving? Do you think that is a positive thing going forward that they'll continue to do? Because technically, you're not having to go through about like 3 guys and go through and get tackled by 3 guys. Typically, if you're receiving, you may only get tackled by 1.
Yeah, and I do think they need to keep him involved in the passing game, because that is it's something that defenses just don't frankly pay that much attention to with the Titans, because they've never really done it before, and that could change. But again, like we kind of just talked about, if they do change and all of a sudden they are keyed in on Derrick Henry as a pass catching threat, that's going to open up some other things and give them some other options. So I think they got to keep doing it. And frankly, like one of the plays in the second half, which again, the second half, the offense just kind of, it was just kind of a grab bag of miscues. Honestly, I honestly didn't hate the play calling. Watching it back on the all 22, I thought, they had that like 3rd and 1, for example, where they gave it to Henry and he just got blown up in the backfield. It was, that one was a terrible miss block by Nicholas Petit-Frere. Henry would have had plenty of room to pick up that first down if he even like gets a decent block on Crosby, but Crosby literally just takes him and throws him on top of a pile and then tackles Henry for a loss. And you sit there and you go, well, obviously they knew they were going to run the ball at the middle with Derrick Henry. Well, we killed him two weeks ago.
Right.
He gave it to Chig on a jet sweep. So like, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing with Todd Downing right now. And I think, I don't have any problem with him calling that play. Nicholas Petit-Frere's got to block better. Like that's what it comes down to. And then, there was another play to get back to that Derrick Henry pass catching thing. There's a play. It was actually the play where I think it was a couple plays before that fumble. The Titans go to run a screen with Henry. And yes, Ben Jones was a little late getting out and did not necessarily there was a free linebacker, but the linebacker was like 8 to 10 yards off of Henry. And I'm not sure why Tannehill darted the ball at Henry's feet rather than just tossing it to him and letting him see if he could make a play, because, he might have gotten tackled for a loss, but at that point you would trade a few yards lost for 40 seconds of clock running off. And I didn't agree with Tannehill's decision on that. So that there was a few things, and who knows if he breaks one tackle, that could have turned into a huge run because there wasn't anyone else over there. It was just one linebacker. And there was a blocker coming, but there was a lot of just little things in the second half that didn't click. And obviously that doesn't change the result. It's a results-based business, but I didn't think the Titans really did get that conservative in the second half. They just didn't execute quite as well. And the tackles are a problem. Like they are. I was hoping to be a little bit more optimistic about the offensive line coming out of this game after they did, run the ball okay. They only gave up the 1 sack, all that, but it was not good. They are overmatched. Daly may have been a little bit better than I thought, but NPF was worse than I thought. And look, he'll get better. He'll have rookie growing pains. I'm not here to piss on the Nicholas Petit-Frere parade or anything like that, but he is a rookie tackle, and this is what rookie tackles look like when they face all pro edge rushers like Mac.
Well, I mean, you could look at Evan Neal on Monday night with the Giants versus the Cowboys. I mean, he was getting his lunch ate. I mean, they were just sitting and having a picnic in the backfield.
Yeah, DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons absolutely destroyed him, and he was top 5 pick, top 10? Where do you go? Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. There's a few things about Ryan Tannehill floating out there, but I don't really want to get into is he keeping them afloat or anything like that. I have 2 questions, and it's something that I've noticed since the start of the year. I don't feel like Tannehill, and maybe he never did, but he just doesn't have zip on the ball he doesn't have really good consistent velocity. But on top of that, and it shows he's like got 7% batted throws, which is tied for most in the league, which is something that I've also thought was very odd because I don't remember all of his throws getting batted in previous years. What goes into that? Is that just the defense is now being able to read and time a little bit better that he's been playing, or is it that the routes or the way he's throwing to the routes is getting these balls batted down?
Yeah, I honestly, I felt like his velocity was fine. Like there was a couple throws that, I mean, he ripped in there, particularly a couple to Nick Westbrook-Akine, who had a really nice game, and a limited role, but his every single catch that he made was absolutely huge in this game. But there was a couple absolute darts to NWI that I thought showed he still has some arm strength in there. But the batted ball thing is interesting because I do feel like that's a part of how teams are defending the Titans now, just because their propensity to throw over the middle. Everybody knows they want to throw over the middle. And I think every week and you see the Titans doing this in the practice videos where you show, the defensive linemen jumping up and batting the medicine balls and all that stuff to practice getting their hands up and matching the quarterback's hands and things like that. I guarantee you other teams are doing that the week they play the Titans because and you saw it a couple times. Like Max Crosby, a couple times he knew he wasn't going to be able to get home on his pass rush, and he just kind of slid over as close to the middle as he could and just looked to jump and get his huge wingspan up in the passing lanes, and he was able to tip at least one, if not two. So that is, I think, part of just how teams are defending the Titans now, and could be a little bit too of just when you're having to use extra bodies and protection, there's just more congestion. There's less clear throwing lanes to work with. And Tannehill's not a short guy, and it's not like it's a Kyler Murray situation where you just can't, get the ball up over.
Can't ride roller coasters.
That's right. It is, I think, just a function of how teams.
I just thought that was interesting because I brought it up on Sunday when we were watching the game. I brought it up in the chat. It's like it just feels like he's got more batted balls this year than he has almost since I've been watching Tannehill throw here in Tennessee. It just feels like there's been 2 or 3 almost every game, and it's just really prevalent these first few weeks. So that was interesting. The defense is a off-season positive that has turned into a regular season negative. Now, I do want to talk about one person, or really two, Rashad Weaver and Danico Autry.
Yes.
Because I think that they have really tried their best to make sure that the Titans pass rush doesn't miss a beat. I think I get that Rashad Weaver's probably playing a lot more than what he expected. That's good for him. Get him in shape, whatever. He get that cardio, bud. And he's got 3 sacks through 3 games, which is, I mean, when you talk about it, that's if you get a sack a game or average a sack a game, that's 17 sacks. That's the most that a Titans player has had in forever. I feel like maybe it's like Javon Curse or something.
Yeah, he'd go to the Pro Bowl if he kept up this rate.
Yeah, and that's great, right? I mean, you may not have multi-sack games. You may only be like 1 sack here and there, but in all honesty, you're getting more out of Rashad Weaver because you have to, and he's answering the call.
Yeah, I thought Weaver played well. The teams are giving a ton, and I highlighted that sack that Weaver made. Teams are giving a ton of attention to Jeffrey Simmons right now, and Simmons's presence actually made that sack for Weaver, in my opinion. Because if you watch that rush, and it's up on Twitter. I retweeted it, and I think it was No Flags Film that had it up. So go find that. But if you watch that clip, the right guard is setting against Jeffrey Simmons, who is lined up in a kind of a wide 3 technique actually, and then Rashad Weaver is in a wide 9 outside of the tackle. So at the snap, the right tackle is one-on-one with Weaver. He's got no help, no chip, no tight end, no running back to that side, nothing. He knows he's one-on-one against Weaver, but despite that, he starts the play actually putting an inside hand over on Jeffrey Simmons to try to help the right guard, which keeps him tied to that guard and makes that corner very short for Weaver to work around. And Weaver ends up getting a nice little swipe bend kind of combo and flattens out and gets the quarterback. It was a great rush by Weaver, but it's really made possible by the fact that Simmons is drawing attention of the right tackle and keeping him from widening and really going to meet Weaver out on the corner. So it is, I think that's part of what's going on is Simmons is getting a superstar treatment from opposing offensive lines, and Autry and Weaver are playing well and taking advantage of some of that. The problem that I've got with this defensive front right now is they're slow. They're very, very slow. And you see it when they do get pressure in the pocket. And this is one of those things, and this is something I feel like really crystallized for me last season when the Titans had their success as a pass rush unit, that it really is a unit. Like they hunt in a pack, and Landry may not be, Myles Garrett or, Joey Bosa or whatever, one of these premier pass rushers, but he's very, very good at staying around the football and then cleaning up when, a guy like Derek Carr, who's got marginal athletic ability, goes to try to escape. Harold Landry would usually chase him down and be able to, bring him down for the sack, even if it was someone else that generated the initial pressure. So I think that's what they're missing right now. And look, Bud Dupree's the same way. Bud Dupree is that same type of player. They desperately need Bud Dupree back, and they can't afford an injury to any of Autry, Simmons, or Bud Dupree. Period. Like, cannot lose any of those guys long term. They were able to obviously win this game without Bud, but those guys are critical to what they're trying to do, and you see it in the run game too. Like, how many times were the Raiders able to get the corner against these edge defenders, because the edge defenders just can't disengage from blocks and get out with any sort of speed to be able to make a tackle and set the edge. So
yeah,
it's a real
Derek
problem.
Tuska was supposed to provide that speed, and he
hurt.
got washed out. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess the point of this defense is right now is, I made a comment about, oh, well, I like how the Titans cut a loser to sign a loser, and because that means nothing changed, and it's just some, sense of calm and comfortableness that you get knowing that things aren't going to change. And Easton, he jumps in the replies and goes, it's something about back end rosters. I don't remember what he said, but he's acting like these guys won't play. Well, Derek Tuska, because of injuries, the state of this roster, these guys play. Terrence Mitchell was picked up off the street, played 48 snaps. Trey Avery played a ton of snaps as an undrafted free agent. And then you have Tuska getting 18 snaps with Wyatt Ray, who they picked up. They're basically taking up all of Harold Landry's snaps when you add them together. These guys play. So it's I don't think that Mario Edwards is who they picked up.
Yeah.
I don't expect anything from Mario Edwards, and I'm fine with that. It's just that, to say that these guys aren't going to play, you're not watching the game, because these guys get snaps because of injuries. If Harold Landry was healthy and they were doing these moves, who gives a shit, right? Like, nobody's going to give a flying fuck that they cut Derek Tuska and picked up Mario Edwards because they have everybody healthy. But the state of the roster is right now, these players matter, because what this team has proven, whether it's the right approach or wrong approach, they are going to put this guy in, and they're going to expect him to make plays. And if they don't, your team is going to be on the losing end of some runs and of some passes.
Yeah, I think the Titans are kind of in a bad situation.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you were without.
They're doing the best they can, sort of. Don't get me wrong. They're kind of doing the best that they can, but they're really just like you said it on the thing. John Robinson has he must have his filter for the waiver wire set to only Steelers players. I just think maybe branch out from Patriots and Steelers players and see what's out there.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice. I don't think there's a secret superstar, on someone's practice squad or waiver wire or whatever. Look, I would have loved for them to hang on to David Aneni or Tack McKinley. I don't know. I would love to know what the actual details of Tack leaving was, if that was his decision, if they offered him a spot on the 53 at the same time that the Rams did, and he just chose the Rams, because that's entirely possible. But they need some better help. And I thought, McKinley would have been better help. I thought Aneni would have been better help. I'm shocked that they chose Tuska over Aneni at this point, because I mean, Tuska hadn't really done anything. He'd been okay, I guess, for the Steelers in like a special teams role mainly, but Aneni had at least flashed in preseason and shown you something. So I'm surprised they kind of let him get out the door in that situation. But either way, any team, any position in the NFL, you lose 3 of your top 4 guys to injury, you're going to be playing some scrubs. Like there's not a team that's sitting there rolling in another, this isn't, Alabama where, you have 4 injured guys and they bring in, the guy that was a top 50 recruit. He was just behind the other guys that were top 10 recruits, like that's not how the rosters work in the NFL. And the Titans being without Landry, Dupree, and Adaney all at the same time sucks. Also because those are easily your 3 most athletic edge rushers.
Right.
Like, those are all the same type of guy. And now Weaver is what he is. Like, he's a good player. He's a good piece, but he is slow. He is a slow dude. He does not have the foot speed that any of those other guys do. And that hurts him as an edge defender, and also, just his ability to close in the pocket and things like that. So they desperately need Dupree, and frankly, they need a Adaney too.
And Adeney's not even being, or Adeney. A ninny is not even being used by the Pittsburgh Steelers, by the way. At least, Tack McKinley went in and played 7 pass rush snaps for the LA Rams. He didn't do much. He got a nice little grade, but he didn't do much. But you look at David Ninny, he hasn't even taken a snap for him. Like,
Those
I don't understand what happened there, that he thought that he was getting a better situation over there at the Pittsburgh Steelers when he should have been over here. But let me say something. This is going to go into our next thing about this team and the weird snap counts for rookies. So maybe he didn't think that he was going to see the snaps because he's looking at Chig and he's looking at Caleb Farley. Go, well, shit! If these guys can't find snaps, well, how are they going to find snaps for me? But before we get into that, Mike, I just want to take a commercial break, a station break, and let you tell the people why they should become a Broadway Insider and use code ANNUAL to get $49.99 a month and become Broadway Insider, because the Mike Herndon Show with new graphics and everything is there and ready for you. You and Easton are putting on a great production on this show. It's for insiders only. You guys do little segments, little games, but you are basically taking your written content that you are known for, that you slaved over, and putting it in audio form for the people. So people obviously can learn something. Tell them all about the Mike Herndon Show.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is the idea is kind of that it is the old all 22s, just in verbal form, which, frankly, it takes me a lot less time to do than putting together a whole 10,000 word written dissertation on with game clips and everything on whatever the Titans did the previous week. So it is the same content, just in a different format. But yeah, I'll be getting into a lot of the stuff that I saw X's and O's wise, and where the Titans failed, where they succeeded, what they could do, what they can't do, in this week's episode. And I think it's going to be an interesting show this week, just because they did show some different things, which we already touched on a little bit here, but we'll get into a little bit more detail on that show. And then my goal is to have the Twitter account for the show, which is at Mike Herndon Show. I'll tweet out some threads with the video clips that kind of go with some of the plays that we're going to specifically talk about. So follow on there as well, and that'll be tweeting out the links to the show and everything like that as well. So give that a follow and listen to the Mike Herndon Show on Friday morning.
Okay, Mike, snap counts. We're talking Chig and we're talking Caleb Farley. One offense player, one defense player. I am so confused about what this team needs to see out of these players over players like, when you have Kyle Phillips out, great time to play Chig. When you have, struggling to find a 3 cornerback rotation, you go to your number 1 cornerback, or go to your first round draft pick. Easy for me to say. First round draft pick, Caleb Farley, who is 6'2", and match him up on a 6'4" wide receiver instead of letting a 5'11" loser you just signed off a practice squad on Wednesday on a short week be on an island with this guy. And he's physically outmatched in both athleticism and physical attributes. And there's no way. We're going to get into this, and this is not me trying to convince you of that I'm right or wrong, because I really don't know what is going on in the Titans head. So this is like me doing discovery. I'm investigating this murder of Caleb Farley's career and trying to figure out what went wrong, what's the motive by the Titans and all this stuff, because I don't know. Like, I spent the majority of the time talking with Braden on Monday on a football show, which is 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, when we were live from the pharmacy. We couldn't figure out why, because how can you sit there and say it's about trust and execution and knowing the playbook, but then put a guy that doesn't know your playbook and put him out there on an island after 4 days of trying to learn your playbook? So that, to me, just feels like it's a load of crap. And then I go and look at Christian Fulton's stats today, and I go and look at Jeffrey Okuda's stats over their first year, and I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe there's hope that Caleb Farley is just they're working through something with him mentally and emotionally outside of what the playbook entails. So I ask you, Mike, Do you want to go with Chig first or Caleb Farley first?
Let's go with Chig first because I think Farley is a more in-depth discussion.
Gotcha.
And, like, I'll say this for Chig. I would like to see them get him the ball more because, frankly, I think he's good with the ball in his hands. And I think the way the Titans used Jonnu Smith when he was a rookie back in, what was it, 2017, it would have been, was really smart. They got him on some tight end screens. They let him catch the ball in the flat sometimes, kind of be the third check down read on some like 3-level concepts and things like that. Just any opportunity to get him the ball with the ability to run after the catch. And I'm not totally sure if Chig will be as good after the catch as Jonnu was. Jonnu was pretty special in that regard, excuse me. But Chig, that was one of his strengths on tape at Maryland, and I think that's something that I would like to see them do more. Look, I mean, they need to find a way to get the ball to Traylon Burks' hands. They need to find a way to get the ball into like Robert Woods, showing some major flashes these last couple weeks of being like back to being the guy that he was with the Rams. Is very positive, and they need to continue to feed that. But there's got to be room in this offense for Chig Okonkwo to get 2 or 3 touches a game. Like I'm not saying he needs to be a huge focal point of offense, but more than what he has been. Because frankly, I mean, we heard all the buzz all throughout training camp of, hey, this
Right.
guy's getting all these touchdowns. He's, he's super effective. He's catching the ball all the time. He's got great hands.
And they've only given him the ball twice, right? Did he get targeted at all in the Bills game?
I don't think so. I can't remember any targets for him. So it hasn't been much. He's got 1 target officially.
One target, and that
and then
was
one,
and that was the first down catch, and then he also got the handoff. This ties into the Caleb Farley thing with me because we hear one thing, but we see something else in action from this staff. So we hear that with Caleb Farley, it's essentially he can't be trusted. He kind of had a lukewarm average camp with a lot of ups and downs, and he has ups and downs in the game. But all you heard all off season is that, yeah, Chig's going to have to work on his blocking, but he's explosive. He's making plays. He's getting touchdowns. He's earned the trust of Ryan Tannehill, which to me is the most important person to earn your trust with if you're trying to be on offense. And so, like, these two things don't make sense. It doesn't jive with me. So I don't understand why, with Chig's athleticism, that he only played 9 snaps. That's ridiculous. And to only have 1 target. And so if you're playing 9 snaps and you're trying to maximize those snaps, I'm looking at it right here on PFF. And so those 9 snaps, 5 of them were for run blocking, and 4 of them were for him going out and doing a route. That's not enough route running for a guy like Chig Okonkwo in my mind.
I agree. And I know this will really you'll really like this. Kevin Rader outsnapped him 15-9.
I even forgot he was on the team. When I read it, I was like, oh, I forgot they signed this guy, and he's getting all these snaps.
Fresh off the Steelers practice squad as well.
Yeah.
But yeah,
let me ask you a question. Just real quick, because this would have been the perfect opportunity to showcase Chig Okonkwo with no Kyle Phillips. You could use him to mitigate some of that. Instead, it's Cody Hollister. It's Jeff Swaim. It's Kevin Rader. It's these guys. I don't understand if Jeff Swaim's going out for a route. Why can't, in that instance, Chig chip and go out for a route?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I always figured we would see a good amount of Swaim and Hooper together in 12 personnel, just because Swaim is their best blocking tight end, and I know he's
which
not
means
a great
which
blocker.
means none of them are good, by the way.
Right, it does. But and to be fair, like, I think most NFL tight ends at this point are pretty bad blockers because it's not something that like gets developed very well to me. So I think Swaim is the best of the bad blocking Titans tight ends. So I can get Swaim getting a good amount of snaps, but I figured we'd see Swaim and Hooper for some early down 12 personnel stuff. But then I thought we'd see some Hooper Chig snaps as well, where you get two guys who are, both not really, great run blockers. I think they're subpar overall run blockers, but they're at least bigger bodies, and see if the defense will match up with those guys being on the field as tight ends and give you some advantages in the passing game, because I think both Chig and Hooper can beat, your average linebacker in man coverage. And maybe they need Chig to prove it a little bit more than what he has to this point. But Hooper and Chig snaps where they're together on the field, I feel like is something that this team needs to find at some point and use, because that is clearly the most talented pass catching set of tight ends that you could have on the field together. And if they're at least credible blockers, which I don't think either one of those are terrible run blockers. They're not Ferkser, for example, but get them on the field. See if you can get some matchups with those guys, because they're both good, dynamic pass catching type tight ends. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that combination. And, I don't mind the Swaim snaps. I really don't. And Raider, frankly, was really, I thought he was pretty impressive as a blocker.
Don't start this, dude. Don't do this to me, Mike. don't fucking take me down this road.
He's going to play more next week. I'd almost bet it.
Oh my God.
Because, he was pretty good.
I can't believe you did that to me. Listen,
if you need another lumbering white tight end, the Titans are going to find one.
Hey, you're available, right? I mean, on Sundays, you can go out there and do it. Mike, this Caleb Farley thing's just got me all confused, because I get, and I put out in a tweet, it doesn't matter to me whether he can't be worse than what Terrence Mitchell was. Now, I'm not saying that he's great, and I'm not saying that he could even be better than Terrence Mitchell. He may be the same, but even if he's the same as Terrence Mitchell and he allowed the same plays and the same amount of yards, isn't getting the snaps important for this kid? I don't understand, because I look at Christian Fulton, who wasn't very good his first year and his first 7 games. And if you take his snaps and you take Caleb Farley's snaps so far through 3 games, and you kind of extrapolated all the stats, did all that shit, all the calculations and stuff, they're pretty much on the same path of a starting career, because really this is injuries and everything. This is really Caleb Farley's start to his career. And I look at Jeffrey Okudah, who struggled with injuries his first year, and then missed all of last season after the first week, and he was awful when he played. I mean, you're talking about a guy who played, I think, 8 or 9 games and was on pace to allow 1,200 to 1,300 yards. So, and Farley's not as bad as that. So I don't understand why they are forcing Caleb Farley to sit on the sidelines in fear of messing something up, when you have a guy that is messing up way worse than anything that Caleb Farley's done in one game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because they mess up in different ways. Like, Terrence Mitchell was really, really atrocious in this game, like really bad. But he was not out of position, is the thing. And I think that may be something that they steer like too extreme on, in that Farley, because he's had a few instances that I've noticed and in the first 2 games of busted coverages. Obviously, the one that stands out the most is that Bills play where Stephon Diggs, they were in man-to-man, and for some reason he just left Stephon Diggs and covered the flat, which the linebacker already had the flat. And he was just kind of standing there in the middle of nowhere, and Diggs was running around wide open in the end zone, eventually catches the touchdown pass.
Who was the other defender that was back there? Because there was another defender back there behind Caleb Farley over to the, if you're looking at the TV screen, looking over to the right.
I'm not sure because Diggs started at the left on that play
Yeah,
and then ended up all the way back to the middle, almost like to the right side of the field. And Farley just didn't run with him. And
right.
I don't know if that was, it's sure it's possible that maybe they were supposed to pass that off somehow or whatever. But
Well, I think he
based
was
on,
playing the Isaiah because usually Isaiah McKenzie gets that ball in that particular instance, and for
right.
whatever reason, I mean, Josh Allen made a tremendous throw to Stephon Diggs, who made it easy for him because he's wide open. So I think that he kind of like bit a little too hard on a play that they had saw be run before.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying. He didn't cover his. He left Stephon Diggs, who is his man, wide open.
Yeah. In the other instance that I know he busted a coverage on was they were running quarters against the Giants in week 1. And there was a vertical from the number 1 receiver, which, would be the guy closest to the sidelines. And there was a vertical that ran on his side of the field, and he didn't run with it. He stopped and tried. I don't know what he was trying to do. If he looked like he was just trying to pass it off or something like that, or trying to read the quarterback and maybe jump down on a route, but he passes it off. Kevin Byard sees him pass it off and takes off after the guy because I think it was Sterling Shepard. Maybe I'm not totally sure on that, but the guy was run wide open down the field. And if Daniel Jones had seen him, it would have been an easy touchdown. But what ended up happening was because Byard had to run out and try to cover this vertical route that Farley let go, Jones was able to convert. It was a third down. Was able to convert a third down on this crossing pattern, which was right into the area where Byard vacated to go chase down Farley's man. So it's kind of like a compounding error, but it still resulted in a first down conversion and could have resulted in a huge touchdown. So I think those instances continually popping up, and I'm assuming those are happening in practices as well, because if they weren't, like, I know it's not always completely fair to ascribe common sense to NFL coaching staffs and NFL decision making, because sometimes they just aren't. Like, sometimes they're just bad at their job, or there's something else going on, or whatever. But for this coaching staff, I find it hard to believe that they're just not playing him for no reason. It has to be that they just don't. They feel like he's more of a liability than he is a help right now, and it's their job to make that better and to fix it, as well as his. Like, Farley needs to take some personal accountability on that as well. And but that's the only thing I can figure is that they think, look, this guy, he's playing out of position. He's not, doing what we're asking him to do. And as a coach, I know that their mindset is, give me the guy that's going to be in the right place and actually compete. And maybe he's not as talented, but we're at least going to make it hard on them or make them make a play rather than just give them things. And I'm sure that's what they're thinking with this Terrence Mitchell thing. Which, look, Farley maybe would have been better in that game. Like, maybe he doesn't have the mental gas, and he would have certainly been more competitive covering Mac Hollins and the other Raiders receivers that just had a field day on Mitchell. But that's the only thing I can think. That's the only explanation that makes sense to me, is that he's busting these coverages in the games, and he's also doing it in practice, and they're just fucking tired of it.
Where I guess let's start with that. The fact that, Mitchell was in the right spot, but it didn't really fucking matter. Is that enough for him to get the start? Because you saw Trey Avery get all those snaps and he continually got beat. I guess here's a better question. This is the better question. At what point in the game do you look at these guys, Trey Avery, and you look at Mitchell, and you say, okay, these guys aren't any better than Caleb Farley. In fact, they may be worse. Let's put in Caleb Farley at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid question. And like, Mitchell was getting picked on from the start. Like, it happened right away. The Raiders were going after him. Obviously, Christian Fulton being on the other side. Why wouldn't they? Especially when they had.
And I'll be honest, Christian Fulton and Roger McCreary didn't have their best games at all either.
They didn't have great games, but I
Yeah.
thought they played well
I mean,
overall.
yeah, when you got Terrence Mitchell, everything looks a little bit
But
better.
the
But I
the
mean,
one
I think they did look good. I just don't think they had their best games. So it was all Terrence Mitchell, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think Terrence Mitchell was awful. And yeah, they went after him right away. And I don't know. I would have preferred they try Farley at some point in this game because he could not have been worse. Like, it just really couldn't have been. But I don't know. That's the only explanation I can understand is if they're just so worried that he just doesn't understand the game plan, doesn't understand what they're trying to do, and they just feel like they can't put him out there.
Well, whose fault is that? Because I can't. That the reason I ask is because I kind of go and know that the player has to go out there and execute what he's told to do, right? But I also know that, look, I'm a pretty damn good chef, or I wouldn't say chef, I guess, but I'm a pretty damn good cook. I can pretty much execute almost any recipe in you give it to me. But there are certain recipes that will give me trouble because they're a little bit out of my range of expertise, and it may take me 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 or 5 times to perfect this particular recipe and to also remember everything in it. I kind of look at the recipe book or cookbook and a playbook and think, this guy doesn't have a lot of experience at this position. He is he's not picking up supposedly what they want him to do. But we also know that this team kind of gets into this little groove where it's like, okay, well, if you're not up here with us, up on our level, then we really don't have time to, get you ready and teach you everything, which I know it's next man up and all this stuff, but at some point, don't you as a coach and don't you as the GM want this kid to develop and have to take, especially with injuries, have to take a little bit of extra time and maybe put a little bit of extra attention and focus to get him ready? I know it's on him to still prop himself up, and maybe that's what they're waiting for. But at some point, some people just aren't built like that. I don't know the answer, but I'm just looking to hear what you feel about how much of this is on John Robinson and how much of this is on the staff outside of what we know is a part of it is already Caleb Farley's fault.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm putting if I'm assigning blame on this, I'm giving the lion's share, probably 90% of it to Farley and or John Robinson, because look, Roger McCreary was given 100% snap rate right away, like straight out of school as a rookie, picked it up right away. So to me, the coaching staff has prepared at least one guy in very little amount of time to be very effective at his job, because McCreary's been good. We haven't seen the blown coverages with him. Sure, he's given up a few catches here and there. He's not, locked down or anything like that just yet, but he's been good by and large so far. So to me, if they're developing him well, if they've developed Christian Fulton very well over the last 2 years, to me that says, look, it's on Farley and or the guy who picked Farley that they have not put themselves in the right position to this point. And everything you hear about Farley coming out of Titans world is that they love him. They think he's got the right attitude. He's always said the right things to the media and in press conferences and things like that. But I just think that there's something that's not clicking yet. And whether that has to do possibly with him not fully trusting his knee and that being a part of whatever's going on, or him not fully picking up in the playbook. Like the Titans run defensively one of the more complicated schemes in the NFL, in my opinion. So it's not the easiest to pick up. And that's also part of why I think they don't want to dumb it down for any one guy, because that's a part of what they do that made them really successful last year, at least, was the fact that they are very multiple in the way that they can play coverage and the way that they can disguise things. And if you're not, like you said, if you're not up there on their level, they can't use you because you're holding them back from being able to do what they want to do at this point. Now, I think Terrence Mitchell probably doesn't have all the nuance down to their
Right.
scheme after 3 days either. So that probably isn't a part of that here with this specific game. But Farley, I mean, it's got to be either he's just not physically there coming back from the ACL, or he just doesn't have the playbook down, or he just, mentally is struggling to handle everything that they're throwing at him. Or maybe it's a combination of the two. I mean, that's certainly within the realm of possibility, but at some point, it seems like they've worked with him, they've tried, and it's not clicking yet. I don't think the door's closed, and he'll certainly get more opportunities as the year goes on. But it's once
But
Molden's back,
well, that's what I'm saying. But will he get more opportunities?
well,
Because I asked this question not because I want to see anybody injured or anything, but it seems like the only way he's going to get opportunities is if like 2 or 3 people get injured at this point. Because the only reason he went into the game at all is because Christian Fulton had a cramp, and then when you bring back Elijah Molden, and then Ugo Amadi will eventually, be fully healthy. I mean, that's a lot of people to try to overcome that this staff obviously loves. And I go to this quote today about Christian Fulton. I'm assuming it's from today, but this is from Sam Phelan. This was tweeted out on Tuesday at 11:05 a.m. Sam Phelan of A to Z. Titans Christian Fulton says not getting reps in games can definitely kill a defensive back's confidence. This is the NFL. Everybody comes into the league confident in their abilities, but once you don't get those reps out there, you can lose confidence in yourself. That was the quote from Christian Fulton. I don't see a path outside of doing consistent work in practice, which practice isn't everything in the regular season that translate to games that this team likes to think it is, because we've seen a lot of people who practice great within a week and then shit the bed on game day when the lights come up. So how does he get snaps? Because that's what everybody's clinging to, right? At this point, you shouldn't put Terrence Mitchell out there because Caleb Farley needs the snaps, and he can't be any worse than Terrence Mitchell, especially if Terrence Mitchell's only prerogative is to cover Matt Collins while we take everybody else out. Caleb Farley should be able to do that. But this team doesn't think so. So if you can't get in over Terrence Mitchell, if you can only get into a game because of a cramp, how does he find his way onto this field to see that maybe he does just need to work through it?
well, I think that's one thing that it's kind of a double-edged sword here, because I agree with what you're saying. Like, eventually he's got to play and be able to prove it, right? But I also think that, we can't sit here and praise the Titans for being a meritocracy and saying, well, they're not going to give you anything based off your draft position or your contract. If you're not the best player, you're not going to play. And then also say they need to shoehorn Caleb Farley in there because he was a first round pick. Like, he hasn't shown anything when he's been in the games to make you feel like, okay, well, this guy needs to play more. And I'm assuming based on, them not playing him right now, that he's not showing anything in practice that's telling them that they need to play more. So, like, once Molden's back, I don't think Farley's going to play on defense outside of injury,
Yeah.
because it's going to be Molden in the slot and McCreary and Fulton out wide, and frankly, it should be at this point. Like, Molden, despite being a pretty limited player in some capacity, was way better, showed way more flashes last year than Farley has, either last year or this year. So, to me, it's on Farley
Hey, listen,
to
Molden got
show it.
hurt several times too, but I get it. Molden is just a guy that at least gets it in between the ears, and I think that's what this boils down to is what you're saying, and what the coaching staff has pretty much said is that, yeah, Molden may have gotten burned, by Christian Kirk in week 1, but he was in the right spot. And he just got out. He was out athletic, but he does everything else that they want him to do. It's kind of like Jeff Swaim. Yeah, he's not fast, but he does everything that we want him to do. And Caleb Farley's got all the talent in the world, but doesn't play the way that they want him to play. And I look at it and I'm thinking, that's a misevaluation at some point, right? There's a reason outside of the sometimes side of injury that these players do not get picked. Like we saw Matt Araiza fall because a lot of teams knew, not every team knew, but a lot of teams knew about this criminal investigation. We know that a lot of teams knew about the problems that Isaiah Wilson was having. Maybe there were issues behind the scenes of Caleb Farley just not being mentally there. But can it be because of the lack of experience at the position?
I mean, I think that has to be a part of it, right? I mean, the guy has played, I think, I counted like 140, 150 snaps in 3 years. I mean, that's nothing. And obviously we know the context of him, like what he did at Virginia Tech. That has to be a part of it. Like you
So
just
then
don't.
it's a misevaluation by John Robinson to think that they're going to be able to get something out of him, right? I mean,
Well,
like,
I think what Robinson was going for was very clearly he was hoping that Farley would be cornerback Jeffrey Simmons, right?
right.
Guy that fell in the draft for injury concerns primarily, I think, and but was clearly a supremely talented guy physically that maybe you grab later than he would have gone otherwise and can develop into a star. The problem is that Jeffrey Simmons was a fully developed game wrecker who destroyed people at Mississippi State and would have been like possibly a top 5 pick, if not top 2 or 3, had he not suffered that ACL injury right before the draft. So Farley was talented, but not quite the level that Simmons was. And then you bring him in and he gets hurt again. So like you can't help that he got hurt again. I get that. That's kind of part of it. It's baked into the risk of, hey, you're drafting a guy that's shown to be injury prone in his college career and he gets hurt again. That's kind of part of it, that you got to take that lump. But to me, it's a misunderstanding of their window more so than anything of, if you were ready to compete with this team to go after a Super Bowl, which they said that they were when they made the Julio Jones trade the next year, right? So you draft Farley in 20. Well, no, it's the same offseason, right?
Yeah.
So they drafted Farley and then they traded for Julio. So that same offseason, you said by trading for Julio Jones, you said, this is our year. We're going for it right now. That doesn't match up with drafting Caleb Farley coming off of a back surgery, not being a super experienced guy. So like, that's my biggest problem, honestly, with the pick. Like I can understand the idea of taking him because a lot of people love the pick when they made it. And of course it's easier to scout in hindsight, but you look at Farley and the Jones move and they just don't mesh to me. Like it doesn't, like, are you going for it or are you not? I mean, and I get like that the draft is really about the future and everything like that. Something I always preach, but Greg Newsome would have been a more NFL ready corner that they could have plugged and played, right away. And that could have helped them last year rather than Farley, who, wasn't able to help them and isn't able to help them so far this year. So I think it's just do you know what your do you know what your window is? Do you know what your actual goal is here? And does it match up with all of your decision making? Because to me, those two moves just don't match from a mindset standpoint. And, the risky picks are not, he's one of 3 so far on risky picks, which, isn't a great hit rate for a first round.
Okay. Likelihood that Caleb Farley turns into, let's say they turns into like a Janoris Jenkins, a Logan Ryan kind of cornerback, a good second, third cornerback that can be regularly used in a rotation at this point.
I mean, factoring in the odds of him being hurt, chronically, maybe 20-25%.
Chances that he has a Jeffrey Okudah or Christian Fulton like resurgence where maybe this year is a wash, but next year is the year.
I mean, I could see that. I think it's.
Do you think he'll still gain valuable experience by sitting on the bench? Essentially,
I mean, he's not going to gain any game experience by sitting on the bench, but going through the install, sitting in the film room every week, being able to be a part of the practices, that's all valuable to him, even if he's not necessarily playing on Sunday, because I think he's got to get comfortable with that knee. And I think that's only going to come with time. And it's certainly something that he can work on in the weight room and in practices, trying to get more comfortable planning and driving off that knee. Cause that's something that has legitimately shown up on tape, that he is just not fully comfortable planning and driving off of that knee, which makes it hard when you're trying to cover a guy and you've got to be able to react to his movements immediately. You don't have time for a gather step in the NFL. And I think that's part of this. So I think physically he'll get better, and I think mentally he'll get better too, even if he's not playing. But eventually, yeah, if this is partially a confidence issue, the only way he's going to really feel confident is if you get him out there and he makes some plays. And he hasn't made any plays. Like, what's the most positive Caleb Farley play you can remember from a real game, not preseason?
Yeah,
there isn't exactly one, so.
Well, before we get into the Colts preview real quick, don't miss Music City Audible with Justin Mello and Justin Graver, and Second in Victory with Austin Nelson, Brett Batchelor, and Chris Carter, and the Mike Herndon Show, which is all on Thursday. And don't forget, you have to have the Insider Pass to listen to the Mike Herndon Show and on Thursday and be able to watch it, because you do videos for it too. So it's audio and video only for Broadway Insiders, the Mike Herndon Show. And don't forget, as this podcast and you're listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, you can head over to paulkarski.com and read Mike's latest article, which is going to be kind of a mixed bag of Titans information for you to digest that came out of the game on Sunday versus the Raiders. So that's going to be already available by the time you're listening to this, more than likely, at paulkarski.com. Mike, the Colts versus the Titans. To say that this is a must-win game in week 4 may seem silly, but I feel like it's a must-win game for the Tennessee Titans, because you're playing your first divisional opponent of the season, and you're going to have a quick turnaround to play them again. And the Colts are not that good. I know that they beat the Chiefs, but if you go and actually had paid attention to that game, the Chiefs gifted them the game. Matt Ryan has been horrendous. He's been a fumbling machine, a turnover machine. It doesn't matter what weapons he has there. He is going to be fumbling and all that stuff. Jonathan Taylor had one of his worst outings of the year. Mike, am I crazy to call this a must-win game?
No, you're not crazy, because frankly, the Jaguars being 2-1 and the Colts now being 1-1, you don't really want to fall a game and a half and really, with the tiebreakers and everything, like 2 games behind the Colts, which you would if you lose this game. And you certainly don't want to fall 2 games behind the Jaguars already as well, which is possible if the Jaguars are able to win this week as well. But the Titans need to pull this out some way or another, because this is an opportunity for them to kind of steady the ship a little bit. It feels like, you've got, after this, you've got the Commanders who look awful right now. That's a home game, right? That's back at Nissan Stadium. And then you've got your bye week, and then you've got the Colts again back at Nissan Stadium. So this next 3-game period is an opportunity for you to right the ship. So if you want to get out of jail from this 0-2 start that they dug themselves into, mostly losing to the Giants, like everyone can forgive the Bills loss, even as ugly as it was. But if you want to get out of jail, you've got to win these next 3 games, in my opinion. And then all of a sudden you're right back where you want to be. You're probably first place or tied for first place with the Jaguars, and the Colts are way behind you, and the Colts are done frankly at that point if they lose both of these Titans games. So this is your opportunity. Go take it. Go beat the Colts. The Colts are vulnerable. The Colts stunk against the Chiefs. I mean, that's one of the flukier.
The Chiefs went too conservative, and in all honesty,
they missed 2 kicks.
you could talk about this team being conservative on a regular basis, but other teams make stupid mistakes and are conservative as well, and they'll lose a game, and that was the Chiefs. And Mikey, everybody's been hitting home the second half woes and all this stuff. And I know that your article today is going to be about talking a little bit about that. What would you rather see? A little bit of a sluggish start, but a more complete game, or just go up really big and then as long as you win, we can stomach another second half meltdown? At what point does the second half have to kick in before it's actually a curse or a something that you can't escape?
Yeah, it would be nice to change the narrative just from a standpoint of, the 57-7, they've been outscored in the second half or something so far, which is awful and completely
scoreless in 2 games.
It's completely backwards from what most of the Mike Vrabel era has been. So I don't think this team suddenly became unable to adjust or figure teams out at the half or anything like that. And I know, Titan Stats, our guy Wes, tweeted out some of the Derrick Henry numbers, and maybe the like cumulative effect of Derrick Henry is not quite as potent as what it once was. But I still think they're an effective team running the football, usually in the second half. I think that becomes more pronounced later in the season, honestly, anyways. So the fact that the last 2 years it wasn't the case, but that only captures early season stuff because of when Henry got hurt and everything, that probably plays into it too. So I really don't even care that much about the halftime narrative. I would more so rather just see it go away, because I don't think it's that important, frankly. I think it's a fluky thing.
So you think it's a fluke, even though that under the Todd Downing era, it's been proven that it's a fact so far.
I mean, again, we're talking about, and I'll have some stats for this in my article, but when the Titans get up big in the first half, they have not been a chronic choker. They haven't lost many of these games. Now, some of them may have been closer than what you would have preferred, but they haven't really choked away many games that they were up big in.
So you're okay with it as long as it's a win.
As long as it's a win, yeah. I mean, it's fine.
Do you think that's what other teams do? Like other winning teams? Like, don't you see teams when they get a lead just keep on pressing on and on and on? I mean, you saw the Bills do it to you just a couple of weeks ago. I mean, to me, I feel like that kind of separates the haves and the have-nots when you get into playoff time, when you have a killer instinct and killer mentality that you've ingrained in your team. I don't feel like this team has that, and I would like to see that against this inferior Colts team, right? The Colts are really just as bad as the Giants. This is a team that you should be able to go in and you should beat by 20 points. If you get up by 20 points in the first half and then you end up in the second half, just winning by 3 points, to me, that still is a bad thing. It's a win, but it's a bad thing for your long-term prospects, I guess I should say.
I mean, in a perfect world, I would certainly prefer for them to have a killer instinct and blow teams out when they're up big, finish it and blow them out. But I frankly, I just don't see, as long as they're winning the game, and they have been consistently during the Vrabel era. That loss to the Giants was very, very rare for this team during this era. As long as they're winning the game, that's what matters at the NFL level. There's style points are out the window. It's go win the game. And look, sometimes like you could argue that trying to be more aggressive and really step on the throat could be a more effective way of winning the game. But the Titans' way of doing it has been very good during the Mike Vrabel era. And I'm not going to complain too much about wins, because I know how hard it is to win in this league. And you see it every week, the Chiefs getting beat by this terrible Colts team, or the Bills losing to a Dolphins team that had no business beating them, frankly. It happens every week, and you've got to take the wins where you can get them.
Okay, let's do a little rapid fire going around the AFC South. We'll stick with this Colts game. If the Colts win on Sunday versus the Titans, how do you feel about the Titans, and how do you feel about the Colts?
I guess it would depend a little bit on how it looks, but I would feel like the Titans are not a playoff team 100%. And I would feel like the Colts are still probably
Shitty.
not a playoff
It
team.
doesn't change your view of the Colts. It just makes you not want to be on Twitter for a couple of days, right?
No, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The Jags are for real.
I think they're okay. I think they're for real in the fact that I think they're better. They're better than they were last year. They look well coached, like which you would have expected from Doug Peterson. However, I don't think they're quite as good as what they're being made out to be right now. Some people are saying they're like a real Super Bowl contender and all this stuff. All of a sudden,
Oh, I've seen their players have now started talking shit and creating little videos and saying, "Oh, you can doubt us if you want to," and I'm like, "Oh, kiss the death,
yeah.
you idiot."
I mean, listen, the Chargers were playing without like three of their best four players on both sides of the ball for most of that game. No Keenan Allen. Rashawn Slater left with an injury that ended up being season ending. They were without their all pro center, Corey Lindsley. They were without
Joey Bosa went out
yeah,
early.
Joey Bosa went out early. Kenneth Murray got hurt. JC Jackson missed the entire game. Justin Herbert was playing with rib cartilage tears. That's like 7 of their probably 10 most important players either out, left the game, or playing severely hampered. It was an impressive showing by the Jaguars in that, like, anytime you blow out an NFL team, I think it's impressive. But the Chargers were not the Chargers. That was not them going and beating the Chargers team that everyone was picking to be like a Super Bowl contender this year. That was some like neutered version of that Chargers team. And I think we should pump the brakes on the Jaguar Super Bowl parade until we see what they look like against the Eagles. Now, after that, they play the Texans, the Colts, the Giants, the Broncos, and the Raiders before they play the Chiefs.
Man, those are like all really winnable games for this team, it feels like.
The Jaguars being something like 7-3 heading into their bye is very much in play. So I don't think we should write them off as a AFC South contender, because I think they really are an AFC South contender. But I don't think they're like 38-10 good.
Yeah. Skipping over the AFC West, are they the most overrated conference that you've ever seen in football?
It's certainly trending that way because Russell Wilson looks like a total disaster. I can't imagine how bad Broncos fans feel right now, having sent what was the price tag? 2 firsts, 2 seconds, like several young players, and I think maybe one other pick.
They sent Drew Lock. They sent Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, and Noah Fant, and 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th-round pick, which was the 2022. 3 of those were in 2022. So they're still going to have to give up a first-round pick next year and a second-round pick next year.
Good Lord. Yeah. Imagine giving up all that and your team's averaging like 12 points per game so far. The Broncos are not good. Their defense is good. Their defense is very good. Their offense is atrocious. It is a train wreck to watch. And I don't know that it's going to get a whole lot better, frankly, because I think Russell Wilson may just be toast, honestly. I think he's been trending down for several years now, and, I think he may be done. And that contract they just gave him too, by the way.
Well, which was ridiculous.
All-time bad by the Broncos. But I think the Chiefs are still good. They've got some flaws too, though.
They're beatable.
You started to feel some of the Tyreek Hill absence in this last game, where they just weren't able to move the ball quite as well. They lacked the kind of explosion that they normally had with him. And then Chargers are already too hurt. Chargers aren't going anywhere. And the Raiders, I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders kind of got back in the division a little bit, just because the Broncos and Chargers, I think, are heading the wrong direction. But the Chiefs are going to win this division by 2 or 3 games, and they'll be sitting Patrick Mahomes in week 18 like they always do.
Who will be the first head coach fired? Because I want to put money on Josh McDaniels.
Oh God.
NFL wide first head coach fired, because they're the only team without a win, which I'm surprised, because I thought the New York Jets didn't have a win. What game did the Jets even win?
Oh, they won that Browns game. That
Oh, that's
crazy
right.
Browns game where they came back. So I think first head coach fired. I'm gonna say, well, Cliff Kingsbury is a good
Well,
option.
they
Matt
just gave him an
Rule.
extension.
I don't. That doesn't matter.
You don't
That
think it
doesn't matter.
matters?
If they go downhill, I think Kingsbury will get canned. There's some Brandon Staley buzz out there. The reports about him
Woo!
losing the locker room and all this stuff, and now they're all banged up. And hey, if they're 1-8 sitting there, mid-season, and everyone had
Former
Super
Coach of
Bowl
the Year
expectations.
candidate Brandon Staley, people tried to tell me last year. I
I
said, give me a
know.
fucking break on that. It's Mike Vrabel and maybe Matt LaFleur would be your other case. But it is definitely never Brandon Staley last year because he neutered Justin Herbert. And now they're risking Justin Herbert to play all game when they're getting blown out. It's ridiculous. And the media took him to task on Monday's press conferences, and they did a really good job holding their coach accountable. I've been a long time since I've seen a NFL media as a group, a team's media core really go after their coach, because you can tell that the media obviously really loves its young players, but they know that what he did was stupid and reckless and could have really hurt Justin Herbert's career and their long-term outlook as a franchise in general. It's a ridiculous thing to do that to Justin Herbert and make him play the whole game, regardless of if he wants to go in or not, and to let him get ejected by that freaking doctor that almost killed Tyrod Taylor. Give me a break. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, the Chargers are a slow motion car wreck right now. What about Frank Reich? Do we think Frank Reich could be in
I
there?
think Frank Reich would I would be surprised. Yeah, because the way that Jim Irsay just looks after these losses and embarrassing losses, and they have to know that, look, Frank's not the quarterback guru they thought he was, and they put too much emphasis on the quarterback position, but in the wrong way. And part of that is because Frank's probably saying, "Oh, I can work with this." Sometimes your coaches got to be honest with your GMs and say, "No, don't get that player."
Yeah. Listen, Colts next 4. They host the Titans. Then they're at Broncos on a short week, which is really tough, traveling 2 Mile High on a short week. Then they come home, host the Jaguars. Then they're at Tennessee. If they lose, let's say they lose 3 of those 4, and they're 2-4-1 after 7 weeks. So does it start to heat up on old Frank?
Well, it has to, because technically, more than likely, because you've only won 1 game, right? So if you lost 3, then you probably dropped 2 division games, right?
Yeah.
So you may win the Jaguars game, but that means you lost 2 to us, or you may lose both to the Jags and split with us if you lose 3 of those games. Yeah, I think he's out, because then you've sealed your fate that you are not going to be able to win this division.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that will do it for us. Football and Other F Words brought to you by Jaspers in Nashville. 2-for-1 beers on Sunday. Head over there to Jaspers in Nashville and get you some beer and good food and watch Titans play the Colts. 12 p.m. I think are they still on Fox, or are they back on CBS?
I think they're back on CBS this week.
They're back on shitty CBS, but that's okay. The TV, you can tell them to mute the TV, and it doesn't even really matter. Put your earphones in, listen to some Mike Keith on the radio, some Titans radio with Coach Mack instead. Drink your beer, ignore your family, eat some food. Jaspers in Nashville. For Mike Herndon, you can follow him on Twitter at his stupid new thing.
At Mike Herndon NFL. It's easy.
And then you can follow me on Twitter at FWordsPod. My name is Zach Lyons. This has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.
A Broadway sports media production.